him!
Get him!
Don't let him escape!
It is midnight in Jerusalem. The olive trees are old, older than memory. Their roots twist into the earth of Gethsemane like gnarled fingers holding secrets. And tonight, those roots will soak in something the ground has never felt before. A mob is moving through the garden. Torches, clubs, swords, the high priest's servants, temple guards, Roman muscle. All of them are closing in on one man who is not running. Jesus stands still. And then the chaos begins. One disciple lunges forward and slices off a servant's ear. Jesus rebukes him and heals the man on the spot. Judas has already done his work. The kiss, the betrayal, the signal, and now Peter and others, they scatter. Every last one of them. Fear does that to men who were certain they would never fear. But in Mark chapter 14, buried between the betrayal and the arrest, there's a detail so strange, so specific, so oddly personal, the scholars have debated it for 2,000 years. A young man wearing nothing but a linen cloth was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his cloak behind. 2 verses, no name, no explanation, no follow-up. Who was this man? Why was he there at midnight in a garden, wearing only a linen sheet? Why did soldiers bother grabbing him at all? And why does Mark, and only Mark, go out of his way to tell us about a boy who ran away naked into the dark? Here's what makes this even stranger. Mark doesn't do useless details. Every word in his gospel is lean, urgent, on purpose. So why include this? Why preserve the memory of one anonymous, half-dressed young man fleeing into the night? Unless it meant something. Unless he meant something. Because here's the unsettling possibility that has haunted New Testament scholars for centuries. This anonymous figure may not be random at all. He may be a witness, a signature, a secret hiding in plain sight inside the most fast-paced gospel ever written. This is the story of the naked witness of Gethsemane. Let's start with the basics, because before we get into the theories, before we chase the identity of this young man, we need to sit with just how strange this passage actually is. In the middle of one of the most dramatic nights in human history, the arrest of Jesus of Nazareth, the moment the whole machinery of crucifixion is set into motion, Mark pauses. He steps away from Jesus. He steps away from Peter. He steps away from the disciples scattering into the dark. And he points a finger at a young man no one else mentions. A young man wearing only a linen cloth. A young man who, when grabbed, twists free, leaves the cloth behind, and runs naked into the Jerusalem night. Matthew doesn't mention him. Luke doesn't mention him. John doesn't mention him. Only Mark. And this is where we need to understand something crucial about the Gospel of Mark. Mark is not a leisurely storyteller. He is not Matthew carefully arranging 5 great discourses.
So shine before others.
He is not Luke painting beautiful portraits with words. Mark is urgent. Mark is breathless. His favorite word, used over 40 times, is immediately. Things happen fast in Mark. People move. Events crash into each other. There is no fat in his writing, which means every single detail he chooses to include is deliberate. So why this one? Why mention a young man who contributes nothing to the story, who says nothing, does nothing heroic, and exits the scene in the most undignified way imaginable? Why carve out two precious verses for a nameless, naked, fleeing figure, unless you had a very specific reason to do so? That question has produced centuries of debate, and the answers that scholars have proposed are more fascinating than most people realize. Before we get to who this young man might be, let's talk about what he was wearing, because the detail of the linen cloth is not as throwaway as it sounds. The Greek word Mark uses is sindon, and that word carries weight. A sindon was not a robe. It was not everyday clothing. It was a specific kind of fine linen, the kind associated with wealth, with ritual, with burial. In fact, the same word sindon appears just after a few chapters later in Mark 15:46, when Joseph of Arimathea wraps the body of Jesus in a linen cloth for burial. The same word, the same gospel, used twice. This is not an accident. So what does it mean? Why is this young man wrapped in burial linen at midnight in Gethsemane? Some scholars believe the sindon is a clue pointing to wealth. Fine linen was expensive. This young man likely came from a well-off family. He was not a street beggar who wandered in. He had means. He had access. He had some kind of connection to the events of that night that went beyond coincidence. Others have proposed something even more striking, that the linen garment is a deliberate literary echo, that Mark is using this image of a young man wrapped in linen to mirror the burial of Jesus, that the one who flees naked in the garden will later, in some interpretations, appear again, no longer fleeing, no longer wrapped in burial cloth, but seated, clothed in white, at an empty tomb. We'll come back to that, but for now, hold on unto the sindon. It tells us that this was not an ordinary boy in ordinary clothes wandering through an olive grove by accident. This was someone dressed in fine linen, someone who had come from somewhere, someone who had reason to be there.
How can this be? It contradicts everything
Now, we come to the part that has fascinated theologians, historians, and biblical detectives for 2 millennia.
A forgery.
The identity of the naked young man. There are several major theories, and every single one of them, if true, changes the way you read the Gospel of Mark. The first theory is that he was Mark himself. This is perhaps the most popular theory, and the one with the most elegant logic behind it. The reasoning goes like this. Mark's Gospel is unique in including this detail. The detail is oddly specific: the linen cloth, the seizure, the nakedness, the flight. Details this personal and this embarrassing are almost never invented. They have the texture of lived experience, of something a person would remember precisely because it was humiliating, because it happened to them. Ancient writers, particularly in the Greco-Roman world, sometimes inserted themselves into their own narratives in exactly this way. Not with a name, not with a self-portrait, but with a small personal cameo, a hidden signature, the kind of thing only they would know. If Mark was the young man, if he followed the disciples to Gethsemane that night, perhaps roused from sleep, wrapping himself in a linen bedsheet, and trailing after the group, then these 2 verses are his confession. His moment of transparency, his admission that he was there, that he ran, that he abandoned Jesus just like everyone else did. It would explain everything. The precision of the detail, the fact that no other gospel includes it, the odd specificity of the sindon, and the strange humility of including such an unflattering moment, unless the person writing it was saying quietly between the lines, I was there, and I am not proud of what I did. The second theory is he was the owner of the upper room. Here is another theory that scholars find compelling, and it connects this anonymous young man to an earlier scene in the same gospel. In Mark 14:12-16, Jesus sends 2 disciples into Jerusalem with precise instructions.
That direction, that city. Find a man. He will be carrying a water jar. Follow him.
They are to follow a man carrying a jar of water. Unusual sight, since water carrying was typically women's work. Who will lead them to a house? There they will find a large upper room, already furnished, already prepared. And they went and found it was just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover. Now, who owned the upper room? Mark doesn't say. Luke doesn't say. John doesn't say, but someone did. Someone of means. You don't have a large furnished upper room in Jerusalem unless you have money and property. Someone who had clearly already been coordinating with Jesus. Someone whose house became the site of the Last Supper. The theory suggests that this same person, this wealthy homeowner, perhaps a young man of means, followed the disciples to Gethsemane after the supper. Perhaps he wanted to stay close to Jesus. Perhaps he sensed danger. Perhaps he simply couldn't bring himself to go to bed while something this momentous was unfolding outside his city. He would have been wearing nightclothes, fine linen, the kind a wealthy household would use. And when the soldiers came and grabbed him, he fled. If this theory is correct, then the naked young man and the owner of the upper room are the same person, and the Gospel of Mark quietly includes him in both scenes without ever revealing his name. The last theory is that he was a young man named JOHNMARK. Now, here is where the thread pulls tight. In Acts 12:12, after Peter miraculously escapes from prison, he goes immediately to a specific house in Jerusalem. The text says he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. Mary, a woman of means, a homeowner in Jerusalem, a gathering place for the early church, and her son, JOHNMARK, a young man closely connected to the apostles, closely connected to the events of those early days. This is the same JOHNMARK who later travels with Paul and Barnabas. The same JOHNMARK who, tradition holds, eventually becomes the companion of Peter, spending years at the apostles' side, recording his memories, his stories, his eyewitness accounts of Jesus. And the same JOHNMARK who most scholars believe is the author of the Gospel of Mark. If JOHNMARK's mother owned the upper room, if her house was the gathering place Jesus had arranged, then JOHNMARK himself would have been there that night. He would have followed the disciples to Gethsemane. He would have been the young man in the linen cloth. He would have fled and would have later, decades on, written it into his gospel. 2 quiet verses, unnamed, unannounced, as his own private testimony. A signature written in shame and in grace. You might be asking at this point, okay, interesting, but why does it matter? Why spend so much time on 2 verses about a boy who ran away naked? What does this change? Everything. If the naked young man is Mark, if this is the author inserting himself into the story in a moment of raw, unguarded honesty, then the Gospel of Mark is not just a historical document. It is a confession. It is a testimony. It is a man saying, I was there, I failed, and I still believed. about the courage that takes. Mark doesn't have to include this. No one would have known. There's no other gospel that mentions it, which means there was no external pressure to acknowledge it. He chose to put it in. He chose to preserve this embarrassing naked fleeing moment, not because it made him look good, but because it was true. And that kind of honesty, that willingness to write your own failure into the sacred text, is itself a kind of theology. It is saying the gospel is not a story about people who got it right. It is a story about people who got it wrong, who ran, who denied, who scattered, who fled naked into the dark, and who were still found, still used, still trusted with the story. Peter denied Jesus 3 times and became the rock of the church.
I do not know the man.
Judas betrayed him and is remembered in infamy. And somewhere in between those stories is a young man who ran naked from a garden and who may have spent the rest of his life writing down everything he could remember, making sure the story was told, making sure nothing was lost. Because that is what you do when you have failed the person who changed your life. You spend the rest of your days making sure their story outlives your shame. Now, remember I told you to hold on to the word Sindon? We need to return to it, because there is one more appearance of a mysterious young man in the Gospel of Mark, and it comes at the most pivotal moment in the entire New Testament. Mark 16:5 says, the women arrive at the tomb on the first day of the week. The stone had been rolled away. They go inside, and this is what they find. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. A young man in a white robe, sitting calmly at an empty tomb, telling the women that Jesus has risen. Now, Matthew says it was an angel. Luke says it was 2 men in dazzling clothes. John says it was 2 angels. But Mark says a young man. The same Greek word he used in chapter 14, Mianiskos, young man. And where chapter 14's young man was wrapped in a linen sindon, this young man is clothed in white. Scholars have wrestled with this parallel for a long time. Is this the same person? Is it meant to be the same person? Is Mark deliberately creating a literary bookend? The young man who fled in darkness and shame appearing again at dawn, transformed, clothed in light, bearing the most important news in human history? Some say yes. Some say it's an angel in human form. Some say it's a resurrection appearance coded in symbolic language. But here is what almost every serious scholar agrees on. Mark constructed this parallel on purpose. The young man in the garden and the young man at the tomb are meant to be read together. Whether they are literally the same person or symbolic the same figure, they form a mirror. One flees, one remains. One strips off his covering and runs into darkness. One sits clothed in white and announces resurrection.
For he has risen.
And if the young man in the garden is Mark himself, if this is his hidden signature, then perhaps the young man at the tomb is his hope, his vision of what transformation looks like, his way of saying, the one who ran in the dark can still be clothed in light. It is worth noting that this interpretation, that the naked young man was Mark himself, is not a modern invention. It is not something cooked up by the 21st century scholars looking for clever readings. The early church knew this story, and many of the church fathers, when they spoke about Mark's gospel, treated it as deeply personal, as eyewitness adjacent, as the testimony of a man who had been close to these events. Papias of Hierapolis writing in the early 2nd century, described Mark as the interpreter of Peter, someone who carefully recorded the apostles' teachings and memories. Eusebius, the great church historian, preserved this tradition and expanded on it. The connection between Peter and Mark was understood to be close, personal, and long-lasting.
Even the bitter part.
If Mark was in Gethsemane that night, if he was young, afraid, wrapped in linen and running, then Peter would have known it. And Peter, who had his own catastrophic failure that same night, may have been the one who first told Mark, write it down. Don't leave yourself out. Put it in. Because Peter understood something essential about the gospel. It was never meant to be a story of heroes. It was always meant to be a story of grace, finding people in their most unworthy moments. And so Mark wrote it down. 2 verses, no name, hidden in plain sight. Let's slow down one more time, because there is something spiritually important hiding in the flight of this young man that we cannot afford to miss. Every major figure in the passion narratives runs away or betrays in some form. Judas betrays. Peter
I do not know
denies.
what you are talking about. I do not know him.
The disciples scatter, and an unnamed young man runs so desperately that he leaves his only covering behind and disappears into the night with nothing. This is not incidental. This is the gospel telling us something about the human condition, about what happens to people, even devoted, sincere, close to Jesus people, when the cost becomes real, when the soldiers arrive, when the torches are close, when the hands grab you and the fear is not hypothetical anymore. Everyone runs. And yet, the gospel does not end in the garden. The gospel ends at an empty tomb, which means the running is not the final word. The nakedness is not the final image. The shame is not the conclusion. Verse 3 for this episode, and perhaps the most important one of all, comes from the lips of that young man at the tomb in Mark 16:6-7. Don't be alarmed, he said. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Tell his disciples and Peter. Peter, the one who denied him 3 times, called out by name, specifically included, specifically not forgotten. If the young man at the tomb is connected to the young man in the garden, if this is Mark's literary and theological arc, then this message is also for him. For the one who ran, for the one who fled naked, for the one who failed, he is going ahead of you. You're not disqualified. You're not abandoned. You're not defined by the night you ran. Go to Galilee. He will be there. 2 verses, no name, no explanation, but hidden inside them, if scholars are right, is the fingerprint of an author, the confession of a young man who was there, who failed, who ran, and who spent the rest of his life making sure the story was told correctly. We don't know his name with certainty. We call him John Mark. We call him the author of the second gospel. We call him the companion of Peter, the co-worker of Paul, the young man Barnabas believed in when no one else did. But on the night of the arrest in the olive grove of Gethsemane, he was just a terrified boy in a linen sheet who let go and ran. And somehow, that is exactly the kind of person the gospel keeps choosing. Not the composed ones, not the fearless ones, not the ones who stood their ground when the soldiers came, the ones who ran and came back, the ones who failed and kept writing, the ones who left everything behind in the dark and found in the light of an empty tomb that they had not been left behind in return. If you have ever run from something you should have stayed for, if you have ever let go of something sacred because the fear was too big, then this story is yours. The naked witness of Gethsemane didn't just flee into the night. He came back and wrote the gospel. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Subscribe to the Whisper of Scrolls for more stories the Bible doesn't explain, but never wastes.